officially filed for bankruptcy. Our watchdog on Wall Street, Chris Markowski, is here to talk about where do we go from here. How you doing, Chris?
Not too bad.
Alrighty, so both the president and the governor of Michigan have spoken out and said that while they know their plan will work, it will not be a cakewalk. Let's take a look.
Working with my auto task force, GM and its stakeholders have produced a viable, achievable plan that will give this iconic American company a chance to rise again.
We've got an administration that's behind a viable American auto industry. It's going to be a tough summer, but we're going to emerge. You'll have a new GM, a new Chrysler, and ultimately a new Michigan.
All right, so there you go. My question is, viable, wasn't that the word we were using back in December?
Last fall. Remember when we got to put the money in now or forget it, the companies are going to go into bankruptcy. We put the money in, the companies still went into bankruptcy. It's kind of like if you have a bucket of water and you have a hole in the bottom, you can keep pouring water in, but you know what? The water is going to eventually pour out. Didn't matter how much money we pour into GM or Chrysler, until they fix their business model, they're not going to work. And in my opinion, what they're planning on doing with General Motors and Chrysler, this drive to produce subcompact cars, and once again, this is my opinion on the entire matter, we're going to have to see gasoline at $6 to $8 a gallon like they have over in Europe to force us into buying these cars. Because if you take a look, top 10 best-selling cars in this country, not one is a subcompact.
And so you're saying with taxes and that kind of stuff,
taxes.
They would just drive the price of gas so high that you would be compelled to buy these new, smaller GM cars that they have in the production line.
Yes, I mean, we're looking at a universal health care coming forward. That's what they want to push, and that's got a price tag close to $1 trillion. They're going to have to find ways of coming up with the money. We've talked about having a soda tax. They tax various different things. I wouldn't be surprised at all in the coming years. Not going to see it right overnight, but you're going to see gasoline taxes much, much higher.
And that would serve the dual purpose.
Yes.
A couple other quotes that I found were interesting. Fritz Henderson, GM CEO, says, GM says, this is a reinvention of GM. There are no second chances. We won't need one. Well, what was the last $50 billion if that wasn't a second chance? I don't understand that quote.
Well, they say he's the CEO of the company, but he's really not the CEO of the company. The president right now is the CEO of General Motors, and for all intents and purposes, right now of Chrysler, until that whole deal with Fiat goes through. We have over 60% of the company. Canada, I think, has about 9%. The rest is in the UAW. Basically, he has to do whatever the government tells him to do.
So, going forward from here, I mean, what's your opinion as far as both, investing in this company and whatever restructured thing, and also buying GM products? I mean, how safe do you feel that is of a
Well, this is a dilemma.
venture?
I mean, will America go out and say, you know what, I'm going to buy a GM automobile when my tax dollars have already gone into the company? I would have liked to seen the company go into bankruptcy the right way last fall, and I would have had no problem today buying stock in maybe Cadillac or Chevrolet, independent companies, smaller, better run companies.
All right, Chris is going to be in the chat room all morning long, and you can join in on the discussion at dailybuzznow.com. When we return here on The Big Show, we're going to be diving into the inbox, checking your emails, and also it's going to be Man versus Wild versus Mitch English.
So the deed is done. GM has officially filed for bankruptcy. Our watchdog on Wall Street, Chris Markowski, is here to talk about where we go from here. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
Okay, so where do we go from here?
That's a good question. Everybody's wondering right now, and everybody thinks we're heading down the subcompact route. What types of cars they're going to be rolling out next? What type of layoffs we're going to see? Was in the chat room, and people were concerned about that. Looks like about 20,000 layoffs to General Motors, closing down various different plants around the country. But there has been a saving grace. We said some breaking news that an undisclosed buyer has bought Hummer. It's going to save those jobs. And there was actually some discussion as well, some of the other ones being bought up. Natural progression of things. These are some brand names. Eventually someone will buy them and try to make them profitable. And I think maybe the direction we should have gone in the first place.
Okay, so we'll definitely see more job loss presently, but hopefully Hummer will be able to supply jobs to those that
Seems about 3,000 workers there with Hummer. What we're going to see some job loss as well is in regards to the dealerships being shut down. Now, we were talking about this prior to going on. It doesn't make any sense to me why you're shutting down dealerships. The companies don't own the dealerships. They're independently owned. How do you sell more cars if you're closing down the outlets to go ahead and purchase the cars and service the warranties on the cars? So I'm a little,
And closing down dealerships, let's address, we have about 20 seconds, people that actually own GM cars. What does this mean for them when they even even want to go get their car serviced.
Absolutely. It's going to be much, much more difficult to find warranty-type service, and that may be an issue as well as deciding what type of car you're going to go ahead and buy.
Okay, Chris,
Hanging out with Chris Markowski, the Watchdog on Wall Street, talking all this morning about GM officially declaring bankruptcy and what this means for our government and for our larger economy. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
All right, so in the first hour earlier, we talked about a quote from Fritz Henderson. I want to get to another one here. This from a local UAW president, Local 602, Brian Fredline, who said, I think this was yesterday, he said this, we give $100 billion to Citigroup and AIG with no accountability. If you want to get that taxpayer money back, meaning the $50 billion that was given to GM, buy a GM product. You'll like it.
Yeah, Forrest Gump said, stupid is as stupid does, and I think that's about as dumb a comment I think I could ever hear, and this is ridiculous.
I mean, can you believe that? It's like, you know, people were coerced into becoming, not coerced, they were forced to become investors in GM by putting our tax money in there, and then he says, well, if you want to get that money back, you have to go buy a GM product. If that doesn't highlight the conflict of interest in a government going into the private sector, I don't know what does.
Well, let's play a little game here. Let's play that, Andy, you are the CEO of Ford Motor Company. How would you like to be the CEO of Ford Motor Company when your competition is going to be General Motors and Chrysler and also the umpire? Yeah. Because the umpire in the game is the government, right? They're the ones that decide on the CAFE standards and what's going on. Exactly. The #1 best-selling car in this country, 27 straight years, is the Ford F-150. Now that the government is invested in these companies, can they say, how can we break into market share? Well, let's make that Ford F-150 have to get 50 miles to the gallon. There's a lot of conflicts going on here that people they haven't fully grasped yet.
People were talking about that in the chat room a little bit as far as small cars and their fear.
A little bit of fear of some of the small cars out there, and I think some of the people understand that, you know, and we were talking about it here. I said, you know, I've got 3 kids. I'm not going to put my 3 kids in a subcompact car. I mean, for cities like New York, where you're never getting above 30 miles an hour, yes, I can understand it. But in other areas of the country, it's just not going to work, and you're going to have to force people to buy these cars because Americans are not buying them.
And you think that's going to happen with high gas prices?
Absolutely. No doubt about it in my mind. Yeah, I think we're going to see much, much higher taxes on gasoline, much like they have in Europe.
Thank you very much.